I'll go ahead and call the Livingston Municipal Planning Commission meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everyone that's here tonight. We've got a good crowd. Welcome all of you all. We're going to move right on through item number 2, approval of the August 26, 2024 minutes. I need a motion they be approved as printed.
I so move.
Got one by JJ, second Bruce. All four, let me know by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. There isn't any, carries. All right. Item number 3, discussion regarding the junkyard led by City Attorney Andre Grippin. I hope I'm getting that right.
Almost is Grippin.
All right, sir.
Good evening, everyone. I'm City Attorney Andre Grippin. I'm here to talk about one of the ordinances that we'll be bringing before the council next month. It is a slight change to our zoning code, which would prohibit junkyards in all zoning districts within the city limits. So as it stands right now, junkyards are a prohibited use in every zoning district other than I-2, heavy industrial. And in I-2, it's not even a permitted use. It's a use permitted on appeal, meaning that they would, the owner would have to apply for a variance or appeal some enforcement action in order to have that use permitted. So the proposal is to change junkyards from uses permitted on appeal in I-2 to uses prohibited, which would be uniform across the board in every zoning district. Now, it's been this way with junkyards being a prohibited use in all zoning districts since 1984, so for 40 years. We have a very long legislative history and policy of prohibiting junkyards in the town of Livingston. This change would bring uniformity to the zoning code, make it conform in all districts for the same reasons that junkyards were prohibited uses in residential and commercial and even I-1 districts. They're noxious, they are unsightly, they can be an attractive nuisance where people can get in there and hurt themselves. They can breed vermin and insects, all those things. This would make it a uniform policy across the board within the city limits that junkyards are not allowed under the zoning code. That's the first reason. Also, secondary to that, we have a separate junkyard provision in our municipal code that requires existing junkyards to be screened off. And Walter Rutherford, our new codes official, has taken action against a few property owners, or is beginning to do that, is in talks with them anyway about putting screens up, putting fences up. The concern there is if we have junkyards as a prohibited use in residential and commercial districts, and we are classifying these property owners as having junkyards in those districts, and that's not allowed, they may ask to rezone their property to I-2, heavy industrial. So we may end up where we have requests for spot zoning for heavy industrial zones in the middle of residential or commercial districts where they just don't belong. So to avoid that, we would ask that the prohibited uses be changed in I-2 to include junkyards, which would be uniform across the board. So I have a proposed ordinance that I'll hand out. It's very simple. And I welcome any questions or comments.
The second thing you referenced would apply to existing junkyards, correct?
They do apply to existing junkyards, correct, and it's somewhat of a contradiction within the code. It says that junkyards aren't allowed, but existing junkyards have to screen themselves off. Probably if we were reading the code strictly and following it strictly, that would only mean junkyards that were allowed on appeal in I-2 districts. It happens, however, that there's some property being maintained within the city limits in residential and commercial districts as well that would qualify as a junkyard under that separate section of the municipal code. So there also includes exceptions for places where vehicles are stored under the zoning code that require a screen as well. But so we'll deal with those existing areas as we work with the owners to resolve those issues. But we're satisfied at this point with the screening remedy that the code provides.
Mr. Grappin, just so basically the way I understand it is by making junkyards and similar uses a prohibited use in the I-2 district, this would in essence disallow them from establishing new junkyards within the corporate limits.
Within the city limits,
Yeah.
that's correct. Yeah.
And so I was always under the impression that you couldn't zone something out if it was illegal, as long as it wasn't against state or federal law. So I'm guessing that's not the case then.
The existing ones are exempt, right?
Correct.
Is that okay. Right.
Well, yes, existing non-conforming is grandfathered in, but it has to be a legal conforming use before the change. Here, we're not talking about making anything that was legal before illegal. We're just changing permitted uses or prohibited uses within I-2, which doesn't affect any existing junkyard. There's no junkyard in I-2. We have a very small I-2 zoning district, so it wouldn't affect any of the existing property owners that we might classify as junkyards. We'll deal with those separately. We just don't want we don't want requests to change these property owners' lots to I-2 where we have requests for spot zoning. To your question though, the city can zone certain uses out as long as there's a rational basis to do so. So I think that's proper in this instance.
So if we were to get challenged on this, you would feel confident that it would be upheld?
Yes, I think we have more than a rational basis to exclude this use or prohibit this use within the city limits.
What's going to happen with the 2, 3, maybe 4 junkyards we have that are not in the I-2 designation? Are they going to have to put up screens, or I can see a lot of issues coming out of this?
Yes, and that's part of why we're here. We're looking down the road towards that as well. I believe the city at this time is satisfied with having those property owners put up screens and providing that they don't expand or change use.
I will add to that, JJ, though, that what Mr. Greppin is referring to in our property maintenance code would not come in front of the planning commission. What we're considering tonight is simply amending the zoning code, and like we're talking about making junkyards and similar uses from a use permitted upon appeal in an I-2 heavy industrial district to now a prohibited use in an I-2 industrial district. Understood. Correct?
Yes.
One question. On the east end of the town of Livingston, there's a gentleman that has a mechanic shop there, but he also has wrecked cars and everything else. Does which one of these, is he going to have to go ahead and put up the fence around that?
Are you talking about Huckabee on Main Street? Yes. So that's one of the property owners that we've cited. But again, that's a separate issue from what we're discussing. What we're discussing is just prohibiting in the industrial district junkyards as a possible potential use. Now, part of the reason for that is we don't want Mr. Huckabee to say, well, I'm on the east end of town, I'm on Main Street, and I want you to rezone my property to I-2, along with everybody else that we might take enforcement action against. So right now, that is where we are with Mr. Huckabee, I believe. Is that what we've told him? He's got to put up a fence. But that's not affected by your recommendation tonight. That's going to be enforced regardless.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Greppin, are you looking for a recommendation from the planning commission to the board of mayor and aldermen?
Yes, before, for any zoning change, as you know, the planning commission has to consider it. The planning commission does not have to approve it for the board of mayor and aldermen to pass it as an ordinance, but it has to go through the planning commission and be considered. So that's what we're asking for tonight, is for the planning commission to make a recommendation that the mayor, board, and aldermen adopt this ordinance.
Did you state that Mr. Huckabee had been cited?
Have we issued him a notice? We have the hearing. Yeah, so he has been issued a notice, and Title 13, Chapter 5, which is the junkyard provisions of the municipal code, say that they're issued a notice of complaint. They have an opportunity to answer. We have a hearing, and we have that hearing scheduled.
Does that you quoted, is that the maintenance things that we passed here a few years ago?
I believe so.
Well, I mean, we didn't pass them, but we had input.
In 2019, I think there were some changes to that. Several years before that, the junkyard provisions were implemented. And so the procedure is, he has an opportunity to answer the complaint. We're going to have a hearing. Mr. Rutherford will preside over that hearing. If Mr. Rutherford finds that Mr. Huckabee's property constitutes a junkyard under the ordinance, he will issue an order to correct those conditions as the code requires, which is just putting up a fence or other material like trees or shrubs or something to screen it off from public view. And then he has 120 days to do that, or he can challenge it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Greppin, have you reviewed the city's definition of a junkyard just to make sure? Because one of the first cries of defense is that, well, I'm not a junkyard. And so have you reviewed that definition recently, and does it look?
Yes.
You feel like it looks okay?
Yes. And interestingly enough, the word junkyard is not defined in the zoning code, but it is defined elsewhere in the municipal code. And as you probably know, courts would read those provisions together. So junkyard is, it's a very long definition, but I'll read the pertinent parts. Junkyard shall mean an establishment or place of business which is maintained, operated, or used for storing, keeping, buying, or selling junk, or for the maintenance or operation of an automobile graveyard. This definition includes scrap metal processors, used auto parts yards, yards providing temporary storage of automobile bodies or parts awaiting disposal as normal part of the business operation. Landfills, garbage dumps, etc. So yes, we've looked at that definition, and we think the properties that we've noticed fall within that definition.
Yeah, so we've defined junkyards, and we've also defined junk in that.
Correct.
In that definition.
Yes.
So, well.
Including dismantled or wrecked automobiles. Correct.
And that definition is located?
In Municipal Code, Title 13, Chapter 5, Section 13-501, under definitions.
Yeah, and just so I'm clear, Mr. Greppin, this is going to be on next month's council agenda?
I believe so, unless there's some change that I'm not aware of. And again,
with or without our recommendation, it's going on the agenda.
correct. And again, all we're talking about is saying that you can't have junkyards in I-2. There are no existing junkyards in I-2. It would just prevent any future junkyards. Changing it from a use permitted on appeal to prohibited use. For reference, I'll pass this around. Here's a copy of our zoning map. This square down here is our only I-2 district. And so all we're talking about is saying, here, you are not allowed to have a junkyard. And that's the same as everywhere else. Take a look at that. The shaded square down there is the only I-2 district that we have. I'm not, yes, correct. I think it's maybe 3 parcels total, and volunteer foam is one of the parcels.
Goes to the council regardless.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, is there any more discussion from any of you all? If not, I'm going to need a motion that we go ahead and approve this tonight as presented by,
Does our approval make any difference one way
well,
or
that's
the
what,
other?
that's what Tommy's saying, yeah.
Well, I mean,
Go ahead,
it
go
it
ahead.
potentially could, you know, if the ruling is challenged, one of the things that the courts will look at is whether or not the planning commission approved it or not. But, I mean, it's just like Mr. Griffin said, you know, the only requirement is that we're presented with it and given an option to make the recommendation.
So all we're doing is closing the door for I-2 to have a junkyard on appeal.
That's right.
It's not allowed anywhere else.
It's not.
Yep,
No, sir.
okay.
And again, it's been that way for 40 years.
Any more discussion on it? Bruce, anything? Ricky Mack? JJ? You good?
I understand.
You all are all good, okay. Okay, let's see how I can put this to make everybody happy. We're going to need a motion to approve this as presented tonight. And we need to go ahead and pass it, no matter where we do it tonight or the next meeting, it has to be done. So I'm going to ask again for a motion to approve it as presented tonight. Okay.
What are you doing in the absence of the motion?
Goes to the council without a recommendation.
Right. All that's required is that the planning commission has to consider it.
Phyllis, call tonight on the vote for us, please.
You have to have a motion first.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to need a motion. We approve it tonight as presented. Don't look like I'm going to get that motion tonight. Well, I think we need to have a little more time on this, okay? I know it's not gonna matter whether we do it tonight or what, it's gonna go through, so is that all right with you, sir?
That's right. I think the planning commission has discussed and deliberated and considered it, and we will present it to the council next month and advise that the planning commission did not make a recommendation one way or the other.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Approved. Thank you, sir. Other business at this time? If not, before we adjourn tonight, we've got several visitors tonight. We're going to open the floor. You'll come to the podium. You have 5 minutes with our board right now. You have 5 minutes right now to come to the podium if you have a question or present anything.
They're for the BZA.
Adjourn.
Yeah, they're here for the BZA.
Well,
So, yeah, we just motion to adjourn would be great.
yeah, okay. Okay, I need a motion to adjourn. JJ? Ricky Mack? All for? Just say aye.
All in favor?
Motion carries.